It was clearly on a fast track with no real public debate intended, not even a single public hearing. So we asked that there at least be one public hearing, and there was one public hearing. And we were allowed to bring in an outside person to raise concerns, but it was a done deal. And we paid a price for that. There was no real examination of the qualifications of Brown and Root. They had never built or they had participated in the building of one nuclear plant, but they had never been the chief construction inspector, architect, engineer. They were given the whole package, which is actually similar to now. Toshiba has the whole package. I think that's a terrible mistake. You need an independent third party monitoring what your engineer and your constructor and designer are doing. What happens is when the partners didn't have a real handle on the situation, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was totally captive of the industry and still is, as far as I'm concerned. So the burden fell on us as citizens to go out and protect the community by finding out what was happening at the nuclear power plant. So an inspector from the nuclear power plant came to me and said that inspectors were being intimidated and beaten and all of that, and every time they'd try to stop construction because of a safety violation. And the reason was the project was behind schedule, over budget, big pressure on them. So the inspectors were being pressured to overlook things that they didn't feel they should. And I took his information. He didn't want to go to the NRC because he didn't trust them. And I said, well, I'll go with just the information and not identify you. So I took it to the NRC in Arlington, Texas, and they sent in a team, and this team did interviews, and they came out and said, we don't see any problem. Well, I knew the guy was telling the truth. He even had some documents demonstrating where they had gone past the safety violations. So I called 60 Minutes. CBS put it on their morning show, a clip from that, and then on 60 Minutes that night did a full-blown, it was like an 8 or 9 minute presentation, I think. And within a week, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission had put together a team from all over the country, sent them into South Texas. They were there for a good while. They came out, shut down the plant, fined them $100,000, and had a list of violations a mile long that we took into the licensing hearings. So what that showed me was that the system didn't work. You know, why did it have to be some young anti-nuclear activist in San Antonio going to 60 Minutes to stop poor construction at a nuclear power plant? They have combined construction and operation licenses. Before, you would have to get your construction license, and then during the construction period we'd see how you did as to whether you qualified for an operating license. Now they're combined. You get them both at the same time. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission tried to ramrod the hearings into existence on South Texas 3 and 4, opening it up for interventions, setting a deadline for intervention petitions when the application wasn't even complete. And we had to bring in lawyers and basically threaten to sue them to stop the process before they backed off and said, oh, okay, we'll wait till the application's complete. Their staff wasn't willing to work on the application because it was incomplete. Interveners had to prepare their issues and say what their issues were going to be and file them and be prepared on an incomplete application. Then NRG and Exelon. Exelon was trying to take over NRG. You know, big proxy fight, all the stock things going on. NRC opens up a proceeding on whether to approve this merger before the decision's even been made, and gives interveners 20 days to file a petition. We don't know what the agreement is. We don't know if it's going to happen, but we have suddenly 20 days to enter the process. Again, they were trying to keep interveners out. In the procedures themselves for the licensing hearings, no cross-examination. That's how we made our case in South Texas before. We cross-examined the NRC panels and exposed things they weren't saying. You have to now come with your set of experts, they come with their set of experts, everybody puts in their paper, and the licensing board gets to decide. This is not an adversarial process, it's not a semi-judicial process. It's just a ridiculous process, in my view. Here you have an industry where you know you've had problems in the past with a lack of true regulatory oversight, and you reduce regulatory oversight. You reduce opportunities for interveners to come in when the interveners were the ones that prevented a disaster last time. So you minimize their opportunity to do it this time. This is totally contraindicated, you know, backwards. There isn't a full-blown discussion going on. The council doesn't have in front of it, in the decision makers or the community. The council does not have in front of it, here's nuclear, here's the pros and cons, here's the expected costs, here's the trends, here's solar, here's the pros and cons, here's the expected costs, here's the trends, here's geothermal, here's energy efficiency, here's biomass. No, it's nuclear or not is the question they're being presented.
What about the price sheets that CPS is providing?
Well, that spreadsheet that they have with the different technologies, number one, they were the ones that finally said we consider energy efficiency to be the equivalent of a generator. Energy efficiency is not on the chart. Number two, they have a solar thermal with storage unit at 21 cents a kilowatt hour. That's pretty much the top of the pile. I've got a solar company out there that we're looking at that has a new technology which I've been waiting for. I knew it was coming. That says they're going to produce at 5 cents a kilowatt hour. Are they going to do it? Maybe. Maybe not. If they don't do it, somebody else is. So this is what I said about bet on the curve. Solar is going down, 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 and particularly right now, you're going to see breakthroughs because there's money being invested, there's innovations happening, people are competing like crazy to be the one that delivers the solar solution. So solar is going to be cheaper than nuclear, it's going to be cheaper than coal, and in many areas it already is. It's just we happen to have very low rates because we are using energy sources that don't pay their true costs. We see the solar unfolding as you either jump on the train and take a fast ride or you get left behind. You know, and particularly when you talk about nuclear competing for funds with other technologies, you lock yourself in on the nuclear. You cannot go halfway and change your mind. Once you're in, that's it. So if new technology comes along, I know there are members of the council that have said, you know, what if a technology leapfrogs? And suddenly a new technology shows up and there you are committed to nuclear. What are you going to do? Good question. I have to admit to a bias here that comes from my own personal experience, and that was my daughter. When my daughter was born in 1986, she was born with a very rare eye condition and had 5 surgeries by the time she was like 7 weeks old, and lost the sight in one eye. And the only explanation I ever had for that came from a health physicist. When I told him about my daughter's very rare, the surgeon said he had seen 4 of these cases in 10 years. That's how rare they were. And I told the health physicist the story. He said, well, where were you living? And I said, well, Washington, D.C. And when was this? I said, my daughter was born in September of '86. So she was in utero at the time of Chernobyl. He said the cloud from Chernobyl came over Washington, D.C., and it rained when that cloud was passing through. Radioactive iodine washed out, got into the grass. The cows ate the grass, gave the milk to your wife, and your wife drank that radioactive iodine, and it cost your daughter her eyesight in one eye. So I said, okay. I'd been a long-term nuclear activist, anti-nuclear activist, and I beat myself up for not thinking. But one of the things was, nobody told us the cloud was coming over. Nuclear Regulatory Commission didn't issue any warnings. In Poland, they're passing out iodine to all the young kids to block their thyroids from taking up radioactive iodine. Here, can't say a word because it's bad publicity for the nuclear industry. Well,